Ladies, gentlemen, and exiles of all ages, Path of Exile 2's early access had regular updates, hotfixes, and client patches running right out of the gate after launch, but due to the specific release timing being early December, this was inevitably going to slow down a little bit for the holiday season. The developers have had a nice chunk of time off now the last couple of weeks. Hopefully they've enjoyed themselves and gotten some relaxation in, because as of this week, they are all back in the office, getting right back in there, changing the game once again. That said, there are a number of hotfixes that happened over the last few days for the game, most of them fixing crashes or rarer interactions that needed taken care of, but the biggest one that may affect some players is that Chaos Inoculation, the Keystone passive, no longer counts as putting you on low life. Having 1 out of 1 life is not low life by the game's technical standards. Even if 1 is a low number, it is not 35% of your maximum life if your maximum life is 1. Having this Keystone active previously made you enter low life state, which let players use various passives that either increase your damage or give you a multiplicative crit damage increase when you're on low life, or even more things on top of this too, and you could use this and just have it permanently active with this interaction. Obviously this was quite strong, and simply playing a Chaos Inoculation build, which are popular anyways, should not be able to enable those types of synergies. It was a bug, and so it was fixed. That said, we've had the official return to Office post from the devs as well, in which they specifically said they would be focused on hot-fixing bugs in the immediate future. They are working on a restart patch as well that will be available as soon as it is ready. This is quite interesting, as a large amount of people assume there would be immediate knee-jerk reaction balance changes ready to go immediately after the devs came back, given that they had multiple weeks of players finding the most broken possible interactions in the game, and how the devs were, before the holidays, actually balancing very actively in those first few weeks. But it seems, at least for the next few days, they are aiming to just root out bugs more than anything. That said, like how the Chaos Inoculation hotfix technically can nerf anyone who was abusing that interaction, whether they knew it or not, it was still a bug, so that could count as part of bug hotfixes. So if there are other bugs powering builds, they could be including that within this sort of a general overview. However, I would expect anything major to be at minimum not happening until a proper balance patch hits, at least based on the wording of this post. The next part of interest here is the mention of a restart patch coming soon, and before you get it twisted, as a ton of people did responding to this post after it happened, they are using the term restart patch to refer to a patch that requires them to restart the servers to actually apply, as opposed to most of the patches which either just happen sort of seamlessly when you change instances or require you to restart the entire client. This will be fully server restarting. A lot of people, for whatever reason, took restart patch as a term to imply they were going to do like a league restart, reset the economy, set everyone back to starting fresh characters, the whole shebang. And that was very much not what they intended with this post, so we need to be very clear when we're talking about that. However, just last night, as I was nearly finished making this video, we had a client patch actually hit the game, changing a lot of the things that we had previously expected to be changed soon into being fixed immediately, with the most notable parts of this patch being a fix to the interaction, which was making Delirium awkward to farm, a fix to Rolling Slam as a mace skill, which since launch has been just fully unable to do damage whenever you trigger aftershocks through the skill, which is of course a core part of a lot of mace skill-based builds. But with that being fixed, Rolling Slam is going to end up being much stronger of a skill to build around than it was before, which is always great to see, as it's essentially a bug fix that is also a skill buff. The next major fix from this then that gets rid of a pretty major bug that was affecting the ritual endgame activity, on which sometimes you just cleared out a ritual circle and it remained uninteractable. You could not start that ritual. This didn't happen too frequently, but when running rituals as a main focus of your endgame, you definitely came across it occasionally, and it sucked quite a lot when it happened, as it completely just neutered the rewards for that entire map. So seeing this bug gone is honestly fantastic. There were other fixes too, but those are the ones that will affect most players in relatively frequent scenarios. That said, with the implication of no proper balance patch happening at least this week, I thought it would be a good idea to first talk about bugs or issues we know the devs are aware of and looking to fix, as we can likely expect these to be included in the next few days of fixes. Then we'll talk about some of the things that I would expect to possibly get hit in the next balance patch, essentially just as a warning that if you are using them or aiming to use them, you may have to adjust your expectations once the changes do hit. Starting them with some expected issues to be fixed, a number of these have actually even been lined out in this known issues post that came up yesterday evening. There's one that affects a bunch of players right now, where when you are looking at the map device in your hideout specifically, it doesn't show you the radius of the Lost Towers. You can see this when looking at it at the Ziggurat Refuge in the Act 3 area, but if you use it in your hideout, you don't see the radiuses anymore, and that just makes it much harder to plan out your path when setting up your maps for a juiced up farming session. Then after that, this is another big one. Sometimes when you dodge roll during certain interactions, you'll just lose the ability to do any attacks or cast any spells for a number of seconds afterwards. This is obviously awful in a game like PoE 2. It seems to be specifically tied to the dodge roll itself, as well as players are reporting not having this issue anymore once they use the blink persistent buff spirit skill, which overwrites your dodge roll with a teleport animation. I've definitely had this happen a bunch of times myself when I'm dodge rolling, so hopefully this response means that it will be taken care of soon, because they are at least looking into it. Aside from those problems then, just a little collection of loose thoughts around expected balance changes to happen in the future. Obviously they've said they want to focus on bugs being hotfixed for a bit, but balance will still eventually happen based on the current strongest setups if they view them to be a little bit too over the top. At the very top of the list then for me then is the interaction specifically between the temporalis unique and the Choir of the Storm unique. The Choir of the Storm amulet casts lightning bolt when you get a critical hit. Naturally this has an internal cooldown, so you can only trigger it like twice per second, and this also prevents lightning bolt from triggering off of its own critical hits as well. Temporalis reduces all skill cooldowns, and this also applies to this internal cooldown on the Choir of the Storm amulet specifically. This not only makes it able to trigger literally any time you get a crit with no restriction, but also lets the lightning bolts themselves trigger more lightning bolts if they are crits, which can then lead to an infinite feedback loop that lasts until the enemy dies, no matter what it is. My expectation here is that they will either remove the fact that this bypasses the internal cooldown of the amulet, or if they want to keep this build functioning and looking the way it does, because it is very cool, while bringing it back in line a bit more damage-wise, maybe just make it so specifically the lightning bolt itself cannot trigger the effect when it crits, because even if you say that maybe the internal cooldown being reduced by temporalis is okay, I think it is undeniable that the lightning bolt shouldn't be able to trigger more lightning bolts, because that is where it starts to get really silly. And I think this would be at least a fair starting point to keep the build itself still functioning, because it is quite cool. Past that, a lot of players are expecting something to hit Archmage as a persistent spirit skill that sits at the core of some of the most powerful builds that players have created so far. A skill that adds lightning damage to your spells that scales depending on how much maximum mana you have, meaning the more you can stack maximum mana, the more damage you do, and it's actually quite easy to stack maximum mana if that's the focus of most of your avenues to power anyways. That said, the concern is that balance hitting this skill might be more general, and they may tackle maximum mana scaling itself, which would potentially also have much larger ripple effects across the community that affect people not even using Archmage setups. But at the very least, I would say that they are likely to have a look at Archmage's actual damage scaling, if nothing else. Next up, I want to talk about Energy Shield, as more and more players are moving towards a focus on Energy Shield as a defensive stat the further into the endgame that you get for various reasons. But I think more specifically, and in a more targeted manner as well, the true issue is the Grim Feast persistent buff skill. This allows you to collect Energy Shield from defeated enemies or dead minions, which can overflow your normal maximum Energy Shield to double its amount. And through this, any Ascendancy within the game can relatively cheaply have consistently double their maximum Energy Shield while they're doing mass clear content, at least, like mapping, which is the majority of the endgame itself. If I were to guess, I'd say they might rework the scaling of Grim Feast specifically so the remnants give you less Energy Shield at lower levels, but still evens out around the same at max level, just to make it require more investment in intelligence to make it properly shine and make it consistent at the very least. There is of course more things past this too. There are some really obscenely strong setups out there, but these are the specific few things I think are likely to be at the top of the list of balance changes coming to the game once the devs are starting up on balance patches again in the coming weeks. That just about does it for today, and everyone. Just a discussion about the developers returning to the office, what to expect over the coming days, what they're looking to address sooner rather than later, and then some slight expectations for what skills or interactions may be getting looked into after this immediate time period. Hopefully you've enjoyed this, and feel free to share any of your own thoughts of any of this down in the comments down below. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.